Hi everyone, welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. We're here to give a bit of reaction to the evolving stories coming out of Celtic Park that Ange Postecoglou has now agreed terms with Spurs and looks all but gone. We'd imagine an announcement will come in the next couple of days, tops. Looks like there might be compensation of the order of £5 million, but I'm here to discuss it with Callum and Chris. Paul is on a family holiday and he can't join us today, so you've got the pleasure of us three. Initially, I mean, what complete roller coaster. 48 hours ago, we're on the sun-kissed terraces of Hampden, celebrating one of the finest moments in the club's history. 48 hours later, we don't know who's going to be taking the club for pre-season. Incredible turn of events. I think in my heart of hearts, I thought it was done grin in Hampden, but it's pretty difficult to take now that it's all but officially done. Callum, what's your initial take on what's happened in the last 24 hours?
Kind of a little bit of a shock that it's went this quick. At the same time, I'm glad that it's went this quick, because see stuff that gets drawn out so long and you know the end result, it's quite a painful couple of days that you need to take. Kenny, let's be honest, we all knew this was coming. We knew for about a week ago, as soon as Arne Slot from Feyenoord had turned the job down or compensation wasn't paid, whatever you believe, they quickly turned their attention to Ange, and it's quite difficult to turn that down. In reality, when you consider the outer facts, not even football, but do you want to live in Glasgow? Do you want to live in London? The weather, just simply down to the weather, they get much better weather than we do over the year. Then you get actually into the football. The football's a lot better. The league's more enticing. The competition's a lot better. Guardiola's, Klopp's. It's just currently where Celtic sit. In this time, it's so difficult to compete with any club in England, because they've got the pulling power of. I mean, he's going to Tottenham, yeah, and he's got an amazing stadium. He's getting probably a great paycheck, but I don't feel he's going to Tottenham for Tottenham. He's almost going to Tottenham because it's that gap into the Premier League. It's, as I said, the Guardiolas, the Zebris, Artetas, these managers that he's going to be playing. Like, simply put, I said to my dad, would you rather play Guardiola on a Wednesday night at the Etihad, or would you play Martindale? Kind of sums it up where it is. So it's frustrating, because we also had a project that we were 2 years down the line with. We wanted a third year out of him, but anything that seems to be too good for Celtic these days seems to get taken off them pretty quickly.
I mean, for me, it just seems like a perfect storm. I don't think if it was a West Ham or a Brentford, he'd be looking at it. I think he might look at a West Ham or something in a year's time or 2 years' time when this project had evolved. I think it's just at the height of his reach. He's not going to get a Man U. He's not going to get a Liverpool. Spurs is about the peak of his reach, and he'll probably think this may never come along again, and we're the victims of it. So it's sore in that regard, because I think it is premature. He's only halfway through his project. Chris, how do you feel about it personally? Do you think, I'm on WhatsApp with my mates, some of them are angry at him as a person. Some of them think quoting Tommy Burns 7 days ago and then leaving a week later brings a question over his credibility. How do you feel about it? Because it does emotionally, it's a bit of a challenging one to digest.
Yeah, it's a whole other different set of emotions, I would say, versus when Brendan Rodgers left, right? Rodgers left in the middle of the night. We'd secured the first leg of what ultimately would be a treble that season, and the manner and nature of his departure, it felt like he was a snake, right? And that's really how that one felt. I can't personally, and this is just my feelings, and every Celtic fan will have their own, I can't personally begrudge Ange the opportunity. The one thing Callum didn't say in his sort of response is the age, right? He's 57 now. He's been a manager a long time. He's put his time in. Maybe not enough time for us as Celtic fans into ultimately, I agree with you, Kenny. I think a 3 or 4 year term would have been more than enough for us as Celtic fans, 2, maybe 3 cracks at the Champions League. For me, I don't really have any ill will. My personal feeling is I'm just disappointed. I do agree with some of the sentiment among the fans that there is a bit of a mixed message. Whether or not he directly spoke to Spurs, he clearly knew there was interest, right? Whether it be through his agent, more than likely through his agent, and then or directly to the club, and the club said you can't talk to him until after the cup final. he maybe didn't speak to them directly, but he knew there was interest. I think it's hard because I said this to Paul in the preview video, is that his message has been very consistent anytime there has been an interest. My focus is on the next game, and that's where my focus has to lie, and every Celtic fan would expect me to do that. I agree with that, but I think it's really hard. It's going to leave a bad taste in some fans' mouths because, yes, he made certain statements, the Tommy Burns one being one, the fact that he was, only focused on the next game. Yes, that's true, but he definitely knew there was interest. And I think the stage he's at in his career, and I'm with you, this is the top club outside of Man United, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, and Chelsea that realistically will get him into the Premier League. And only time will tell how it works out. But my overriding feeling is I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed.
I mean, I don't think, see when he's beating the crest and he's gritting his teeth and we were winning difficult away games, I think that was genuine. I think it's a leap of faith to say that he's a charlatan because he's left in the middle of the night and he didn't care. Personally, I don't think that's washes. I don't think you can justify that. Had he gone to a much lower level team, had he done a Rodgers and went to Leicester with nothing to play for halfway through a season, yes, I think it changed my opinion of Rodgers overnight. I think this is different. Spurs is at the peak of his reach. He's getting to the latter part of his career. He's a human being. He'll set up generations of his family. He's a wealthy man already. But as a human being, I can understand why he's taking it, albeit it is difficult. A very, very difficult pill to swallow. But we're going to have to react quick, because if we don't react quick, we need someone in, not just for pre-season, but someone in right now to identify the shape of the team that they might want to create. So what are your initial thoughts? Some of the names, Brendan, which would be an unusual route. I think that was debunked by some of the rags a couple of hours ago, wasn't it? Albeit you never know with Rodgers. David Moyes, Knutson at Bodo, a more sort of progressive coach. Steve Clarke. There's loads of names. What are you thinking, Callum, in terms of the names that are being listed? Who would you like to see? What do you think's realistic, and what do you think the type of manager we should be trying to court?
So it's quite interesting you say there, Kenny. We talk about we need to react quickly and don't take our time. We took 106 days to get Postecoglou in the door, and albeit we were chasing obviously Eddie Howe for 105 of those days. Probably my feeling is I think Celtic need to go the route of somebody that can come in and almost just tweak the squad a little bit, maybe just tweak it in certain ways that they think it needs tweaked. I don't think they have to go completely opposite. So, for example, I think if Celtic were to get a David Moyes, I think you're a little bit shaking the camp up a little bit. He's probably not going to want maybe half the players. He's wanting to bring in a good number of players. His style's different. I think Celtic's best option is Jetto Knutson, the boy for Bodo Glimt. He's won 2 out of 3 league titles in Norway. They're currently sitting top of the group after 9 games so far. I think they've got a goal difference of like +9 already in there, so they're kind of getting a grip with, I don't know who's second, to be honest. I think it was Mould last time I checked, maybe. I could be wrong, but he seemed to get his foot. The only problem is Ajax are chasing him currently right now, so that tells you where his stock is, that teams like Ajax, I don't think Celtic can probably compete with Ajax, and in all honesty, what they can offer with the training academy and the Eredivisie's obviously a better league than obviously our one, so that's quite a challenge. There's a lot of big names. I'm seeing names of Jesse March. He's also got a record at Salzburg. He had a year at Leipzig. It never really went to plan. Then also he went to Leeds. It didn't really work, but Leeds is a job where, I don't know if Guardiola went there, he could have kept them up, but they're that bad. So I don't know about Jesse March. Brendan Rodgers, not a chance in my opinion. He's had his time at Celtic. He walked out for a team that's now relegated. So you don't just get to walk in when Celtic are a little bit, not unstable, but Celtic are in a good position here, Kenny. Don't fans need to remember we're in a very strong position. We've got Champions League group stage, so we've got a lot of time in the summer to bed in players, bed in a philosophy. If we had to change, we don't just have to go, oh no, Ange's left, we need to go and get Rodgers all of a sudden. I've seen it a lot on Twitter today, people just going, well, like, we'll just take him back. Like, He left through the middle of the night, left Celtic in a bad position, took a lot of the staff with him. The only staff he never got was John Kennedy. Remember, somebody like that doesn't deserve to walk back into Celtic. It's not just a job given willy-nilly to the next person because we need help at a time. Celtic will take their time. That's what I believe. Nicholson will look for the next manager. But for me as a fan, I'd go down the road because when I watched his team at Celtic Park, I remember they had beat us 3-1. They got a goal in the first 5 minutes. Solback and Pellegrino were two wingers that destroyed us that night. The boy Berg in the middle of the park was phenomenal as well. So he's got a way of bringing players into Bodo, especially in the Scandinavian League, then selling them on, making a lot of money. Solback and went to Roma. So he's got that ethos, what Ange has done. He's brought people in and then put them on again. So I don't think there's much change. So I would go for Knutson.
I mean, he seems to be certainly the most dynamic, the most sort of obviously fit into the progressive style that we play. Ajax might just prevent us getting that. Rodgers, do you know, my heart says no, absolutely no. You shafted us. Everything you've said is completely accurate. Anybody who said they never want to see me at the club again would be completely within their right. My head can't help but think he might just continue the success. Now, what's that premised on? It's the fact that when we brought Neil Lennon back, it did feel a bit lazy. It did feel like we were just being a bit complacent. Brendan Rodgers remains one of the best British managers of a generation. I think I might let my head rule my heart and would be prepared to take him back. But I think it appears he might have distanced himself from the job. Chris, what do you think in terms of, obviously the big fallout next is who we go after?
Yeah, I'm with you, Kenny. I'm a bit torn on the whole Brendan Rodgers thing as well. I think I would be leaning to not bringing him back. I do tend to side with Callum on this one in terms of the manner in which he left. I think there's just too many fans that would struggle to get behind him, regardless of the fact that his playing style and his managerial prowess would be obviously, the right type of person. But the circumstances, I think, just dictate that would not be a shrewd move on behalf of the club. The only other name that we haven't discussed that I'd be curious to see what other Celtic fans think is Enzo Maresca from Man City, right? Being in Pep's system, is it time for... And look, we all said when Ange was signed, we didn't really know anything about him. You could do a bit of research, but ultimately that was the correct appointment, even though we chased Eddie Howe for a long, long time. And he's done great things with Newcastle United. So again, that would have also probably been a really great appointment. That's the only other name, I think, beyond the ones that you guys have discussed, that I'll be curious to see if he is on a Celtic short list. And obviously we've had links with Man City in the past with other, footballing factors. So that might be the only other name. And that's a person who would ultimately probably come in, to Callum's point about just tweaking the system and using the players that we have to build on the foundation that Ange set, which is really, if you think about it, a pretty remarkable 2 years, that what he's done to the club, to what he inherited, to what he's left us with. Callum is absolutely correct. We're still in a position of strength, but how we build on that position of strength is going to be the single most important thing that happens in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
See, Kenny, just quickly there. See, the reason I talk about Knutson, Kenny, is because he's got a proven track record in Europe. He came, beat Celtic home and away. He beat Roma home and away. I think it was like 9-1 in aggregate over 2 legs against Jose Mourinho's team. He's no mug. He knows how to get a team. And now people can say what they want about Ange. I wish him the best. I'm gutted that he's gone. I don't have any hard feelings towards him. But if we're honest, he was a bit of a failure in Europe. That's not me being throwing my toys at the pram because he's left. It's just the truth that we get put out of Bodo Glimt 5-1 over 2 legs is quite a big result. You look at some of the other games, beat 4-0 at home to Leverkusen. The Leipzigs didn't beat Shakhtar home or away when a team's not spending much more money than we are. So there's a lot of factors. So there's managers out there in the Italian league, the Spanish league, the Dutch league that are punching above their weight at smaller clubs that Celtic can grab, like an Ange Postecoglou, how we got him from Japan. Yokohama were not winning the league every single year. He had brought them from a place from behind to forward. Now there's lots of managers around there, so Celtic don't need to go down the route of, I don't know, like a Michael Carrick because he's a big name, but he's only had a year or two in the job, or a Chris Wilder that's failed at Watford and Middlesbrough. Not a chance. Celtic, I think, need to take their time and make sure that they get the right person in before they push the panic button and just go for a big name like that. Chris says about Enzo Maresca. I think he went to Parma, but he didn't do very well there. So I'd be a little bit scared to go down that route. For me, I think Knutson is the clear and obvious candidate. He's proved it at European level with a small club competing against big teams like Celtic, like AC Milan, like Roma. He's got a proven track record and he's winning leagues. So he's actually used to the Norwegian league being a small league, not great for entertainment or technical ability. And that's what Celtic are. They're a big fish in a little pond, and so is Bodo Glimt in a sense. So he's not going to come here and stay a year or two and then go away straight away. He's somebody you could probably build for a future 3-4 years and then sees himself going to England.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would get pretty universal approval if it was him. Going head to head again with Ajax is difficult, isn't it? But though we are in the strongest place we probably have ever been for an incoming manager. Financially, the strongest we have ever been. Champions League ready, no qualifiers, off the back of real success. The fans are behind the club, the board are functioning well and have been now for a couple of years. So it's not always the case when you're bringing in a manager. So maybe we can stretch our reach a bit more than normal. Where do you think, Chris, this leaves the players, right? Look, the likes of Kyogo, not just the Japanese players, it's so obvious he's like a father figure to them, right? Look at one of the most telling signs for me was when Jota left the park on Saturday. He bear hugged him as if he was losing a father. And to me, I thought that's an abnormal way to leave the park. It's pretty clear something's going on here. Now, they're brilliant technical football players, but they are human beings. Particularly the guys from Japan that don't know Europe, that don't know the language. Where do you think it leaves them? And how do you think that could impact upon us?
Well, I think emotionally, it will leave them feeling pretty vulnerable, right? That's the word that comes to mind, guys, is I think it will leave them emotionally pretty vulnerable. Like, take aside their technical capabilities, take aside the commitment that they have shown to the club, and how they have performed. To your very point, Kenny, they're human beings. Ange is going to leave a huge void by not being here next year, right? And I think, one of the things that we all loved about Martin O'Neill as a manager was he was able to get the most out of players that maybe didn't necessarily have the same technical ability as others. He just had a way to manage and motivate players. I think Ange, with the players he's brought in, had a fundamentally sound technical ability. And then the ones he was able to inherit, Greg Taylor being obviously the biggest example, is within a system, allow them to excel as a footballer. So I think a huge void is going to be left for those players. The question obviously will be, is Ange going to try and poach some of those players, right? We all know how he feels about Cameron Carter-Vickers. We all know how he feels about Kyogo and Hatate. If those three players were to ultimately leave, whether it's Spurs or any other club, that does represent a massive problem for us. Unfortunately, that is the model that we live in due to the league that we play in. It's nothing to do with the size of the club, the support of the club, or the financial backing. It's just that is a fiscal reality. If someone comes in and offers us 20-25 million for Kyogo, there's no way we're turning that down. We're just not. So I think the big thing will be the emotions that the players are left with. Like, you could just see how every one of them felt about him as their manager. You're absolutely right. A complete father figure. And anytime you lose a father, it has a significant impact.
The couple of things I think are in our favour. Spurs, if Harry Kane goes, they're going to need to spend 60 or 70 million on a striker to satisfy their fan base. Mm-hmm. If he brings Carter-Vickers back, I mean, that would be like somebody signing for us and bringing Stephen Welsh back or something, right? Because that's the way he was perceived in the realms of Spurs. They are operating in a completely different sphere financially. Are Celtic's players going to really cut it in terms of how he wants to make a mark at the absolute height of the game in Europe? Maybe not. But the other thing is the Japanese players, they have an incredible work ethic. They are the absolute professionals to the end. They might feel emotionally stunted by this, but I do believe it will not affect their work rate. Some British players, when managers go throw their toys at the pram, throw in a transfer request and down tools, I don't get the impression that the Japanese boys would do that. I do think they'll still fight for the jersey. So hopefully we can ride this out. And if worst comes to worst, fortunately everyone's still on a nice longish term contract. So we've got to make sure we get top dollar. Do you think? How do you see him at Spurs? Do you think he's going to succeed at Spurs, Callum? That's an impossible question for me to ask, really. But do you think his style? He's gone into a bit of a cauldron there, right? He's gone into a club that's relatively disorganised. He's taken a big gamble. You've said it before to us that in 6 months' time he could be unemployed. How do you see him fitting in at Spurs?
How long you got? I mean, it's such a difficult question. I mean, that all hinges on, does Harry Kane stay? Does he go to Real Madrid? It's been reported because he's only got a year left in his contract. The one thing I will say is Ange will go there, and I don't think he'll be like starstruck by Harry Kane. He'll say to him, like he said to Edward when he was here, are you staying or are you not? If you're not, on you go. If you're not fully committed, you're out the door. We'll get rid of you, like Christie's and Christopher Ayers, people like that. So I don't doubt for a minute he'll get his house in order down there. The only problem that he's got is that Tottenham are in a world where they think they can compete with the Arsenals, Man Cities, Man Uniteds, Chelsea's, Liverpool's, but they don't spend like any of those clubs. So that's their biggest issue. And in that league, that's what you have to do to be at the top. You have to spend money consistently. You need to spend it well because Chelsea is a great model. They've spent, I don't even know, £500-600 million, and 14th place they finished in the league. So that just shows you it has to be spent well. Ange will spend well down there because we've seen it firsthand here. I just hope that he doesn't go, and I did say that to you, Kenny, that he goes for 6 months and Daniel Levy pulls the rug from under his feet and he gets sacked, and then he's gave up Celtic's 2-year project for a 6-month holiday in London. I hope that's not. Understand why he's went. Do I think he'll do well? I think he will. I don't think he'll come for Celtic players because, and I don't want to go on to Celtic players, but Carter Vickers, obviously he's been brilliant this season, but he's at Celtic for a reason. If he was Tottenham's level, Tottenham probably wouldn't have let him go at that time, if I'm genuinely honest. If you look at our European record against teams that are probably middleweight in the Premier League, we did struggle against these type of teams. So if Tottenham want to break that top 6, top 8 mould, then they're going to have to keep what they've got and then improve on what they've got. So I don't really fear them coming in for any of the Celtic players, if I'm honest. I think he'll do all right down there. That's probably the best I can say. It's so difficult to judge because Liverpool are going to get stronger. They're rebuilding. Arsenal are going to go again. Chelsea will probably get better under Pochettino. So Man City will go again. Man United will go again. So everybody's going to get stronger. So I don't see them getting top 4, if I'm honest, Kenny. They're probably going to finish. I'd probably say if he gets, when did he finish this year? 8th? Was it 8th place? I think it was 8th. He didn't get any European.
7th,
was
I think.
Was it 7th league? Yeah.
So they're probably, I mean, if he gets in there and gets Conference League football, then it's a bonus, like if that's where they finish. And he needs to build that way. Whether he gets the time, you see in England, I seen a stat, was it, I think 16 managers at the start of that previous season there had been sacked throughout the season. So it's really difficult to keep your job in that league. So whether he's going to have the ability to do it, especially with his pragmatic style that he goes, can you imagine him going to the Etihad and Anfield and going, you just attack them? He done it with Celtic against Real Madrid, so he's not going to sit back with Tottenham because Tottenham's a better team, better technically than Celtic are. So he's not going to have a fear of going on with the Anfield, right, we're going to sit back. He's going to have that progressive style. He's going to hit them, but I mean, going to the Etihad's a different ball game. You could really suffer and do Tottenham sit there and take that. I don't know. So look, I do wish him well. I'm gutted that he's left. I genuinely am gutted. I do wish him well, and I said on the video outside the stadium that he's probably the best manager I've ever seen at Celtic in my lifetime, going as in the football and watching it. I first went under Martin O'Neill, which was incredible times, getting to Seville, brilliant. But watching football and thinking how football should be played, that's the way I believe that it should be played. The ball out from the back, that good style of football, the Pep Guardiola of the 20th century type football, that's the way I believe. So look, I thank him and good luck to the guy. But Celtic's still here and we're still here and we move on.
What Chris, what's your closing thoughts on, I guess, his legacy? It's a bit difficult to talk about somebody's legacy when they've not even technically left the club, and people's legacy, your perception of someone like him changes usually more favourably, if anything, over time. But where do you rate him? You know, how do you feel about his legacy versus Martin O'Neill or some of his predecessors, because he's a very unique man, right? He's left a big mark on us as people. How do you see it?
The amount of time that he's had in the role, Kenny, it's. I don't think it would be fair for me to put him above Brendan Rodgers, who won back-to-back domestic trebles, and if he'd stayed, would have won the third, undoubtedly. And obviously Martin O'Neill, 5 years, 3 Premier titles, UEFA Cup final, beating Barcelona over 2 legs the following season. Like, Martin O'Neill, in my opinion, has the greatest legacy in my lifetime as a Celtic manager. But what I think Ange's legacy is what he was able to do in the 2 years is truly a remarkable feat. Coming out of the COVID season, losing 10 in a row, not winning a trophy for the first time in 9 seasons, he did an absolutely remarkable job in such a short space of time. I would say that in our honest assessment, we probably overachieved last year. Winning the title in the League Cup was definitely a surprise, given how we started with 3 defeats in our first 6 games. And just this year, obviously winning the treble and the 8th time as a club, and 5 times in the last 7 years, like he has to, over the test of time, be stood up as one of our greatest managers. And I think the biggest thing that we will miss as supporters is the connection we had with him and him with us. I said this on the video. He was revered. We loved him. He got us, right? Unfortunately, the circumstances of which he's leaving will leave a bad taste in some people's mouths, but he goes with my best wishes. I absolutely loved the style of play. That was the Celtic football that we wanted for years and years. Even more enjoyment watching him than I did Rodgers' teams. It was just fantastic to watch. And the connection between him and the fans, and I think the players, was a perfect trifecta.
Yeah. I mean, like you, I think had he been here another 2 years, you probably start talking about him being, legend's too strong a word, banded about, but he would, he'd certainly be up there comparing it with the likes of Martin O'Neill, but I think he's left himself just short now, just due to the length of his tenure. But look, well, Celtic, we march on. We're going to have a good summer. Nobody's big on the club. These people that come in, they're just transient figures ultimately. Some of them stay longer than others. We cannot let this derail us or affect our enjoyment of the summer. We are in as strong a place, you could argue as healthy a place as the club has ever been financially. And I think we've got a great platform for someone to come in. When you get a new manager, it's exciting. A new structure, a new direction, new players. Now, it's more premature than we would like, but we've got all that ahead of us, and I think that's the way we need to think about it. So, look, thanks for everyone for tuning in. Just like and subscribe as always, and we'll be back with more content as this evolving story takes shape. And, let's hope we've got a new manager on the horizon. Thank you.